Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HeroQuest, and if you want to get to the meat of this video, all you really have to do is pause at like this frame and just read the text in the background, because that's all that we're going to do. But I am not a redditor. I don't really frequent the platform, and there is a great subreddit that I really should visit more often, the HeroQuest subreddit, the r/HeroQuest. You just call those subreddits, right? It's just a subreddit. I get on to Reddit about once a month because I get emails saying that I've got notifications, and then I log back out because I used the wrong email to get into my account. Then I log back in only to find that it's trying to suggest my new username and everything to me, reminding me that I'm inept at things that should be simple. So third time's a charm, and eventually I get in there and I'm able to see the notifications, but the notifications have nothing to do with me or my account or anything that I've posted. It's just things that Reddit is recommending that I read, like 10 times celebrities clapped back at Lyft drivers for poor customer service and what Karens did about it, or whatever social media talks about these days. Once in a great while, however, I will see a post just like this one from dlongwing about 5 days ago, as of the recording of this video, and used here with permission. I wanted to make a video talking about the ideas that were given in this post on HeroQuest and how to make the game more interesting, address issues about challenge and balance that you may be having, or otherwise sprucing up the game when it becomes a bit monotonous. And for some users, this is a valid take and a valid point. It is something that needs to be addressed at some point, because your table of partygoers may find some aspects of the game a bit monotonous. So with that being said, let's dive in, and a big thanks to dlongwing for giving me the permission to just jump into this and make a video about it. Now, this is a response. This is a response to a post above, so it is being taken a little bit out of context, but the post above is about the power of the knight and how strong they are in terms of defense dice. So this is really a response talking about how to spruce things up, and that is the context in which we are presenting it and reading it. That post is called High Defense, I think. High Defense Dice, if you wanted to look for it on the HeroQuest subreddit and see this post for yourself. But anyways, Advanced Goblins. We will start with Advanced Goblins. You could use the rules for Advanced Goblins. This is something that the HeroQuest official app supports, and I think it's in response to homebrew suggestions, so I think the concept of the Advanced Goblins has been around longer. Goblins may move through heroes, but must end their move on an empty space. And goblins may break up their move to move, attack, move. How you apply this change to your game really depends on the kind of challenge you are facing as far as balancing the game and what your heroes are doing. But this changes goblins into highly mobile skirmishers who can bypass a tank, sick the advanced goblins on the rest of the party while the tank is trying to deal with whatever threat is piling onto them, and the fight will suddenly be a lot more interesting. And this is a great set of suggestions just in and of itself. You as Zargon, of course, the disclaimer goes on and on eternally, can do whatever you want, it's your game, etc. But if you decided to just toss down a few goblins even behind the heroes once they open up that door and there's just a singular big bad and maybe a couple of orcs in that room, that would even be a great idea. As long as they're just goblins, something that even the wizard could take out with a little bit of effort, then it adds flavor and a little bit of risk, consequences if they're not paying attention and if they're not working together to get the threat gone. Okay, next point, lean in to goblins as harassers. Give other monsters a flanking bonus if they attack a hero who has a goblin adjacent to them, because the goblin is distracting or harassing the hero. I would definitely make it clear to the heroes that you are implementing this rule. They may be suddenly confused why a orc now has 4 attack dice instead of 3 and so on. But I do think this is a great rule, and it places a lot more weight on getting the goblins dead as soon as possible. Buff attack and defense without buffing health. You mentioned that a +1 to all stats slowed the game down too much. What about +1 to everything except health? In context, this is referring to the OP giving the monsters a buff, because I guess they were just too easy and getting mowed down left and right. A +1 to all stats for monsters does make sense if you don't give them +1 to their health. It would be much better to be able to still mow down the monsters as long as you are rolling exceptionally well. That one makes sense to me. I do like that one. Better Dread Knights. I'm using a rule where Dread Knights block on white shields instead of black shields. Rules like this, which make particular enemies tougher without buffing all of them, can make the fights a lot more interesting without bogging everything down. This is a great idea. I think you can apply this to any monster you want. If your heroes are mowing down a particular type of monster, and the next quest calls for a lot of that monster, you could have them block using white shields. This brings their chances for a successful block per hit from 16% to 33%, which is the same chance that the heroes have per die to block a successful skull hit. And it does make the fights more interesting. You can easily pick any of the monsters, the goblins, the orcs, and say just for that level alone, they've got increased defense. There are other ways to do this as well. The game system handles this in an interesting way with the Dark Company. The Chaos Warriors that are a part of the Dark Company are able to block all hits if they roll a single black shield. So this can make that particular scenario kind of a slogfest. I would do that maybe with a very weak monster like a goblin or a skeleton. The black shield could kind of represent that monster dodging all of the hits or suddenly becoming out of range for the hero who was attacking in a frenzy, and that could make things a lot more interesting for those skirmishes. But for the really strong monsters, I don't know. But I do think using white shields for a character like the Dread Knights does make things more interesting, so that's a good one. I wouldn't use more rust spells personally. As others have mentioned, the strategic use of the rust spell can set the party's tank back a good bit. However, this is only temporary as they can rebuy armor. They'll get pretty annoyed if you rust a piece of armor each time a new piece shows up, so I'd actually recommend against this. Though if a quest has a caster with rust in it, you better believe that plate mail is getting the old oxidation. I think that's a good idea if you've got experienced heroes who have played the quest before and they know that a particular enemy is coming up who has rust. They're not really going to be able to stop that character from rusting any of their stuff, but they will know that they need to prioritize that monster and kill that enemy as soon as possible. And you may be able to position the character who has the best armor, like the plate mail, in such a way where they're not in the line of sight of the caster long enough to actually take care of the caster and get him gone. So, but yeah, I also would not overuse the rust spell. I wouldn't overuse the twisted wood spell. These are spells that can really change the balance, but also at the cost of fun if you're not being careful with them. Be responsible Zargon. Speed the tank up. Believe it or not, you might want to buff the armor. Have them roll 2d4 for movement instead of 1d6. This will make the strategy less annoying since the whole party won't be waiting behind someone who moves at well less than half their speed. 2d6 averages to around 8 for most rolls, so 1d6 isn't even half movement. I can agree with this. 2d4 if you've got them handy. That's a pretty good way. Maybe 1d8 if you've got one of those. That could still result in a lot of small rolls, of course, but 2d6 whenever I really need to move fast always results in small rolls for my heroes. Crossbows. Pick 1 or 2 orcs or goblins in any encounter and give them crossbows. Now you've got multiple ranged 3-die attackers in the same room. The knight can't close with both attackers at once. This is a strategy that is actually used in a couple of the expansions for HeroQuest, and particularly an example's coming up in my mind in Against the Ogre Horde, where the orcs are standing across the room and there is a row of pits in front of them. If you do try to close with the orcs after understanding they've got the crossbows, you will fall into a pit, unable to search the room for traps. You will simply succumb to the trap. It is one of the most ingenious skirmishes in the entire game, and I really like it. There's not a lot of complexity in HeroQuest, so taking these skirmishes and arranging them in such a way that invites this sort of complexity and makes the heroes think a little bit about strategy and what could happen, is something I think is invaluable. I actually do this myself, but I don't do crossbows. I give all of the goblins daggers. As soon as the heroes finish the first 2 or 3 quests, that's when the goblins get their permanent upgrade. Now every goblin has an infinite set of daggers, and they can be very far away throwing daggers at you. Multiple attacks. Give a creature type multiple attacks per turn. Abominations or familiars would be a good choice for this. The rules say that a hero can only defend against 1 attack from the same monster in the same turn, so monsters that attack twice can get in a free attack for their second strike. For anybody who doesn't know what rule this is referring to, this is something that comes up in the Frozen Horror because you encounter your first 2-attack monster in the Frozen Horror. and that is the Polar Warbear. You can only defend against one of the Polar Warbear's attacks, but they do attack twice. But there's nothing stopping you from taking this rule and applying it to a specific monster or race of monsters for the base game system before the heroes ever get that far. Vary things up to keep them interesting. The biggest problem with their tank strategy is that it's boring, and in context, the poster here is referring to the original poster's problem of the classic door combat strategy that every knowledgeable hero comes up with when they begin playing HeroQuest. You don't even have to have heard about this strategy. After you've played the game for 4 or 5 rounds, 4 or 5 quests, you suddenly realize, if not before, so I would say at the very latest, 5 or 6 quests in, you're going to know your strongest character needs to be right at the door to keep the monsters from escaping. And then with limited actual range, the monsters aren't going to be able to get more than 2 hits on you. The monster right in front of you hits you and then moves away. Another monster moves in and hits you. That's the end of the turn. There's no reason for Zargon to move anybody else unless he's got monsters that have diagonal attacks or ranged attacks. And that is doorway combat, something that plagues HeroQuesters all throughout every expansion. But to get back to what the poster says, you can't solve boring by fixing every single fight the same way. Give them encounters that work differently from one encounter to the next. This room has crossbows. That room has goblins biting at everyone's ankles. Crap, there's an abomination in this room. Protect the knight. The problem with their strategy isn't that it's effective, it's that it's dull. So that is it for this post and this video. Another big thanks to dlongwing for allowing me to share his post for a video. And I think that these are all really solid ideas. They're all really fundamental. You can actually take them and continue to change them to suit your particular challenges for your party of heroes at your table. How would you approach each of these different points yourself for your games? Would you actually do something completely different? Do you have the same kind of points that you would like to add to make sure people are all having a good time whenever you are Zargon? What are some ways that you spruce up the game to keep everybody engaged and immersed? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I will see you in the next one. So until then, have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye for now.